Today's video is going to be a little bit of speculation along with taking a look at where DC Games and WB Games is in general and everything that's been going on with it. Now this video I do want to say was kind of inspired, not like he's the first person to ever do it, but it was a bit inspired by my friend Alex because he kind of started a series where he's taking a look at how he would run things if he was in charge of a company, and he recently did a video I was on about Ubisoft and Assassin's Creed that I thought was very interesting, and it made me think back to 7 years ago. I started this series about how to fix things, and it was like called How to Fix It, and I think I made 1 or 2 videos ever, and then I dropped it, and I just incorporated the idea into like certain other videos. And his idea here made me think, you know, I kind of want to take a look at some of these companies, some of these different things, and spitball some of my ideas. I don't expect them to be picked up or anything like that. It's probably an exercise in futility, but it's something I think is fun. And so I kind of wanted to go back to that as well and take a look at the DC Games universe that could exist. Because right now, I think that there is a hindsight issue with WB. I think they're looking at Arkham and they're looking at how successful that franchise was, and they're saying, oh man, well how do we incorporate stuff into that? And with certain things it works, like certain projects I think that have been in recent years, like Arkham Shadow from Camouflage, I don't think it was something that came about from trying to jam something into the Arkham universe. I genuinely believe it's something that was a passion project that was designed to try and flesh out elements that weren't fully there or weren't fully explored. But with certain things too, you have things like the Assault on Arkham movie, which I enjoyed, but you know, way back it was very clearly dipping their toes into the Arkham universe, trying to see if they could make movies. You had things like the comic books that they would constantly retcon with their games and get rid of. And then you had the more modern things like Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. These are examples of trying to fit things into a universe, but not really knowing how to. And then we get to things like the Flash game being canceled. I already talked about that. Things like the Wonder Woman game being canceled, which who knows what continuity that would have been in. We don't know. No one can really talk about it right now, but you know, maybe in the future more will come out about that. But it's very clearly an example now where WB wants to go back to the well. They're canceling like everything. They're looking at Batman Arkham, and there's already rumors they're doing more there. So I honestly think, not that you can't do anything in that continuity anymore, but right now would be the perfect time for a new DC Games universe, the same way they're doing the new DC movie universe. So I wanted to get your opinion on this. I wanted to talk about it here, spitball some ideas, and I actually thought maybe I could come back in the future, do like my slate of the games I would want to see. But I am interested to hear your thoughts down below of, if there was a DC Games universe, would you be interested in it? And what kind of games would you want to see in it? Let me know in those comments down below. Now, I know that there are actually a lot of people sick of Batman games. It's not that we get them every year, but just the idea of Batman being one of the only DC characters to get games. So I understand that's already a sticking point for some people, but Batman is a backbone of DC. Whether we like it or not, when there is comic book series going on, there will always be multiple Batman titles, even though certain other characters won't get one title ongoing. Whenever there are animated movie universes, Batman is usually one of the ones to get the most movies in that universe. Batman sells. Batman is a very relatable character who I think the average person who's not even into superhero stuff can get behind and can be interested in. And so in that way, I do think that Batman would want to be a backbone of your universe, something that you help build your universe off of. But I think that a big mistake that Arkham did was only doing Batman, where you had Rocksteady doing Batman and you really had no one doing anything else ever. Like, the only things that connected to each other were Batman. And then clearly by the time they got to Suicide Squad, they were like, oh, well, we really should have fleshed out this universe. It sold money, like it sold a ton, made us a ton of money. You know, why don't we add characters into there? I think that's not necessarily the organic way to do it. What you have to do is you have to build a universe where you have different games that are all good games, that all tie together loosely at the very least. But you'd have to make a universe where someone can play a game, and let's say they love Superman, but they don't care for Batman, and they can still enjoy the Superman game, but maybe they don't want to play the Batman game. But then hardcore fans like me, and maybe like you listening, who will buy both, will be able to get a little extra out of playing both. You know, another thing I want to take a look at going back to rejected media on this channel in the near future is that there was recently news of a Marvel Games universe that was pitched like the MCU and never picked up and never went forward. But that's the kind of thing that I think DC could do. You know, it's the kind of thing that they've been sitting on a gold mine for that Marvel hasn't done ever, really. I mean, certain things tie together, but for the most part, there's no overarching game universe. And yet, for some reason, they decide not to do that. You have amazing A-list characters like Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, you know, the entire Justice League just in general. You have characters that are not niche, but maybe not quite as widely known. Characters like Dr. Fate. You know, you have characters like even characters like Martian Manhunter. I think it might be a tough sell to sell a game off of that character, you know, right from the start. But you think about the abilities of a character like that, and in a perfect world, it's like you have a shapeshifter who has a few weaknesses, can pass through walls, has, you know, psychic powers essentially, and has sort of a background in detective work in a lot of ways. That's an interesting character, right? You have characters like Constantine. Apparently there was a pitch at one point for a Constantine game that just didn't go anywhere. Well, Constantine is this kind of very, very interesting character who deals with the underworld. I mean, not the criminal underworld, that comes up too, but I mean things like demons and spirits and ghosts and all of this different stuff, but also has a hand in the supernatural in general and in day-to-day superhero activities. He runs into characters like Batman, Superman. These characters all work together very well in the comic books. There are comics that are awful, and there are a lot of comics that are just fine. But in general, I think it's fascinating to look at these characters and you can see, okay, well, there have been multiple universes of fictional characters forever. Universes of characters like, you know, Batman with Superman, Wonder Woman, Martian Manhunter, Green Lantern, Hawkgirl, Hawkman, the Justice Society of America, all these different characters, right? All together, Booster Gold, Constantine. They can all exist together in a book universe. Why can't they exist together in a game universe? You know, and that's why I think for me, it is something where it could be a Batman-backed universe. Like, you could have Batman as a backbone. Maybe he's getting the most games, but you're still using that to push forward other characters. A big problem WB has had, and I think a lot of companies have, is that they don't want to build up characters now. You know, what they want to do is they want to bank off of characters that somebody built up for decades, but they don't want to have to build up their own characters now. And the problem with that is that eventually interest can run out in a character. There have been characters and things on top of the world that there's not as much interest in anymore. I love Looney Tunes. I love Looney Tunes to death, and I still think Looney Tunes can make money. But that right there is an example. If you look at things like Space Jam, you look at things like the golden age of Looney Tunes cartoons where they were everywhere, all over TV. And you look now, and it's not as prevalent as it was, right? But those are characters that were built up over decades. The same thing could eventually happen to characters like Batman, or Superman, or on the Marvel side, even Spider-Man. I know it's unheard of right now, but the more you oversaturate, the more you focus on just that thing, the more risk you're running by putting all your eggs in one basket. In the past, what they always told you to do with your business portfolio was diversify. You want to be heavy into something, but you want to have enough in other things where if that thing fails, your whole career, your whole livelihood, your entire future doesn't go down the drain with it. But for many years, what WB has done is I think they've treated Batman like that. He is the all eggs in one basket character for movies, games, comic books, and more, that if you ever have a problem with in some way, and again, I know it's unheard of right now, there's people thinking, oh, that'll never happen. There were people thinking that about everything that has quote unquote fallen off. So if you ever have a problem with that, now you have an issue with your entire livelihood. With a DC Games universe backed by Batman, you could make lesser known, smaller games. Who's to say that you couldn't make a huge Arkham style game based on something like Batman Year One, with a starting Batman getting into it? And you couldn't also do almost a Superman Year One type idea of a young Superman starting to figure out who he is. You know, you could even base something like that off of Grant Morrison's comic run on the New 52 with Superman. I know a lot of people didn't like that Superman, but I think most people did think that the early Action Comics stuff of that Superman was good, where you're starting to see this young man trying to figure out how to be Superman. Even Smallville did that kind of thing. You can start your universe young. You can age it with your audience, where maybe, you know, years down the road you have Dark Knight Returns, or maybe years down the road you have a Superman who's extremely experienced dealing with issues that only an experienced Superman could deal with. But that doesn't have to be where it ends. I think that a big problem with these universes as well is the inflation of budgets. And that's why I think that you could also, you know, bring in things like indie studios, bring in things like developers and smaller studios who have a passion for smaller games. We don't get many small superhero games in general, but here's the thing. Who's to say you couldn't make a smaller $30 game, you know, instead of a $70 or $80 game essentially, or a $40 game that's, you know, smaller and more focused in scope, about the Justice Society, or about the misadventures of Booster Gold, or about characters like Constantine, or about characters like Martian Manhunter. Yeah, maybe you look at those and you look at the huge budgets and the massive, massive overhead of a game like Arkham. You know, if you want to make a new Arkham game, and you say, okay, well, this has to be Batman. We have to have this be Batman because that's what's going to sell. I understand that. But going all eggs in one basket, I think has been a mistake for a long time. And it is something that I think, you know, in general, you're seeing other universes and mediums figure out. So why can't we see that from DC Games? Why can't we see them do smaller studio games or smaller independent games even, based off of characters that are smaller? You know, you want a proof of concept? You could do a small game about Harley Quinn, you know, that's maybe 3D. Or maybe you could do a 2D beat 'em up in the same universe as a serious Batman game. You could do a 2D beat 'em up of some other character, like, I don't know, I'm just spitballing off the top of my head, I'm not even looking at anybody right now. Maybe you have a small thief type game based off of Catwoman. You know, like, this isn't my slate. I do still think it'd be interesting to kind of come up with that of like what I would roadmap it as. But when I'm looking at this as a fan, there are all of these different ideas that are put into all of these different video games and game genres already that could serve as a template for a DC Games connected universe. It doesn't all have to be AAA high budget. It can still be loosely connected. It doesn't all have to be the same genre. It doesn't all have to be the same character. And then you're not trying to jam things in post-mortem to the Arkham universe. Now, here's the thing. The wonderful thing about comic books and the wonderful thing about these universes is, even if you're sick of it, which you might be, the multiverse. And what this means is you can do different versions of characters. You could still do an Arkham game if you wanted to in that universe if it fits. But I think that the fact that Kevin Conroy tragically passed away, I think the fact that it's been quite a while, I think the fact that a lot of the Rocksteady developers who used to work on that universe aren't even at that studio anymore. To me, I'm not saying I would not, or that I would never accept another game, but I'm saying that I think right now is the perfect time to start exploring other avenues of business, looking at what are we doing in other areas. I really enjoyed the Snyderverse. A lot of people hate it, a lot of people don't like my opinion on it, and that's fine. You're free to feel that way, I don't really care. I enjoyed it. But here's the thing, the idea of the new DC movie universe is actually good in a lot of ways as well, of exploring lesser known characters. You know, of being able to make a short cartoon about characters that maybe a lot of people don't talk about, or being able to do a comic book tie-in if you wanted to, or being able to do a movie that is, you know, not characters that everyone talks about. Kind of like how Guardians of the Galaxy did for Marvel, these gangbusters. But years before that, most of the people seeing Marvel movies, they didn't have any idea who those characters were. You can do that kind of thing in movies that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Why can't you do it with video games? And that's kind of the thing that frustrates me about it with both DC and Marvel, is that they know that the idea can work, but they refuse to actually pursue it in gaming. And I just don't understand it. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I am very interested. Again, this was just spitballing. Let me know if you'd be interested in a slate of games, like what I would make if I was doing it, or what type of games I would make, or if maybe individual videos of that would be interesting. I do like pitching stuff. I do think it's fun and fascinating, and I think for a while I left it because it was just like, well, no game devs are ever going to care about this. No executives are ever going to care what some guy like me thinks. But I also feel like that's a bad attitude. Like, I still like the thought experiment of taking a look at it as a fan. So let me know what you think as somebody who's passionate about these things. If you enjoyed the video, you want to leave, like, subscribe, that helps us out a ton. Fortnite code DJAY123 helps us out a ton as well. I did want to say that I'm adding more stuff to our channel memberships as well, like more videos every month. So that kind of thing goes to help support us if you are interested. And finally, of course, we do have our own store, CosmoBunny.shop, where we sell coasters, keychains, trays, and more made from recycled paper. These are from comics, manga, magazines, and other paper from books and stuff like that that are not able to be sold because they're damaged. What we do is we take those things, we don't print pictures, we take existing paper and we repurpose it and recycle it transformatively into a new medium, creating these coasters, keychains, trays, and more for your home. So I hope you'll check that out. Discount code DJAY123 gets you 10% off your first purchase. Have a fantastic day, and as always, everyone, stay shway.